Marcia was the daughter of Lucius Marcius Philippus, and the granddaughter of the Lucius Marcius Philippus who began his career as tribune of the plebs by tricking the Senate into carving out land in Numidia for the veterans of Gaius Marius's first headcount army. Her grandfather served as consul in 91 BC, leading the opposition to the legislation of tribune of the plebs, Marcus Livius Drusus, to grant citizenship to Rome's Italian allies, known as the Socii. Because of the increasing divisiveness within Roman politics, her grandfather found himself on the side of the dictator, Lucius Cornelius Sulla, counted among Sulla's closest friends. Sometime prior to the death of Sulla, Marcia's father married her mother, though today we do not know her name. Considering her grandfather was among Sulla's intimates, and, following Rome's civil war, was numbered among the city's new elite, it's likely Marcia's mother was an extremely prestigious bride from a conservative family. Marcia had two brothers, the eldest named after their father, and the younger named Quintus Marcius Philippus, all of whom were born prior to 80 BC. In 63 BC, during the turmoil surrounding the Catiline conspiracy, Marcus Porcius Cato emerged as the dogmatic voice of the Senate's more hardcore conservatives. Like Pompeius Magnus, who divorced his wife in order to seek a marriage alliance with the up-and-coming Cato, Marcia's father also seized upon the opportunity to make a family alliance. Following Cato's divorce from his first wife, Attilia, for what the historians call unseemly behavior, Philippus arranged for Marcia to marry Cato, a man for whom he saw a brilliant future within the Senate. 3 years after Marcia became the second wife of Cato, her new stepdaughter, Porcia Catonis, married Marcus Calpurnius Bibulus, who was running for the 59 BC consulship alongside Gaius Julius Caesar. And though, thanks to the conservative network which centered around Cato, Bibulus succeeded in becoming Caesar's co-consul, he was, nevertheless, completely unprepared to take on the combined might of Caesar, Pompeius and Crassus, leading to an impotent consulship in which Bibulus timidly remained in his house to observe the omens, in a desperate attempt to block Caesar's legislation by declaring holy days. Marcia's husband, Cato, was locked up on the first day of Caesar's consulship, and later that year was coerced into taking an oath to uphold Caesar's illegally passed laws, while also during Caesar's consulship, the governor of Macedonia fell ill and died in the town of Nola, during his journey back to Rome. His name was Gaius Octavius, and he had been married to one of Caesar's nieces, Attia Balba Caesonia. By the end of Caesar's 59 BC consulship, Marcia's father had married the widowed Attia, becoming the stepfather to her teenaged daughter, Octavia, and her 7-year-old son, Gaius Octavius. Yet, despite his newly acquired marital connection to the family of Caesar, Marcia's father continued to oppose Caesar's laws. He was a conservative, but not always in agreement with Cato and Bibulus, who often seemed unreasonable with respect to Caesar and Pompeius. Philippus simply voted on principle. In 56 BC, amidst violence in the streets, Pompeius and Crassus openly vying for command of an army to take into Egypt, a grain shortage which terrified the people of Rome, senatorial debates surrounding Campania's public land, and constant news reports of Caesar forging a bloody path through Gaul, some meetings took place. First Crassus went to Ravenna, where he met Caesar, and then, after leaving Rome to take up his special command to oversee the grain shortage, Pompeius met with Caesar at Lucca. Following these meetings, the Senate grew wary. Marcia's husband, Cato, was mustering as much conservative support as possible for his sister's husband, Lucius Domitius Aenobarbus's run for the 55 BC consulship, and for his own run for the praetorship. But even the Senate knew that were Pompeius or Crassus to run for the consulship, they would easily win. Marcia's father and Gnaeus Cornelius Lentulus Marcellinus, who served as co-consuls during the 56 BC year, both tried to question Pompeius and Crassus about their intentions, with Pompeius responding in vague riddles, and Crassus answering that he would do whatever was in the best interests of Rome. That both consuls saw fit to question the two triumvirs implies suspicion, as well as ignorance of what had transpired between Caesar, Pompeius and Crassus at their clandestine meetings. Yet, the months of Iunius, Quinctilis, and Sextilis, June, July, and August, had come and gone with every attempt to hold consular elections disrupted by gang violence. The Senate was beginning to get the hint. Pompeius, Crassus, and Caesar would brook no competition for the office of consul. One by one, the consular candidates withdrew from the election, except for Lucius Domitius Aenobarbus. Spurred on by Cato, and the hope that a unified party could put an end to the three-way alliance, many of the Senate's conservatives endeavored to join Cato's political revolution, including Quintus Hortensius Hortulus, the orator who had been tumbled from the top position by the talents of Marcus Tullius Cicero. Following the death of his wife, Lutatia, who was the sister of Catulus Capitolinus, Hortensius went to Cato, and seeking a political bond with his family, offered himself as the second husband for his daughter, Porcia Catonus. Cato, however, refused on multiple grounds. Cato's daughter was already married to Bibulus, who would not be willing to give her up. Secondly, Hortensius was nearing 60 years of age, more than double Porcia's age. Hortensius then asked, since she had already given him heirs, if he might marry Cato's wife, Marcia, instead. In this, any children Hortensius had by Marcia would be half-siblings to her children by Cato. We don't know just how long Cato considered Hortensius's proposal, but he ultimately accepted, with the stipulation that Marcia's father, Lucius Marcius Philippus, agreed to the union. After Hortensius's exchange with Philippus, Marcia was given a bill of divorce by Cato. Forced to leave her children in the home of her ex-husband, Marcia moved back into the home of her father, with his new wife and her young children. She likely waited there for at least a month, as a guarantee that she was not pregnant by Cato at the time of the divorce, and then married the orator, Quintus Hortensius, becoming stepmother to his daughter, Hortensia. The historians do not tell us how Marcia felt about being traded to another man, nor about the communications between Hortensius and her father. However, they do tell us that Philippus loved and cherished his stepchildren as though his own. As a father who cherished his daughter, Philippus likely tried to negotiate the best marriage for Marcia's long-term security. Since many women of the aristocratic families married old men, they relied upon their sons to take care of them in their old age. The more prestigious the son, the better. And while Cato's star seemed to be on the rise in 63 BC, causing Philippus to view him as a secure choice for Marcia, by 56 BC, Cato's absolute partisanship, and his obsession with substandard living may have altered Philippus's opinion of him. Because Cato viewed wealth as a form of corruption, he could not be relied upon to bequeath much to his children, but seemed more likely to force on him what he deemed the virtue of hard living. Whereas the sudden offer to marry Hortensius, whose expensive gardens were the envy of all Rome, and who had stayed with his first wife until she died, may have suddenly appeared the more stable choice. Any children Marcia might bear Hortensius would be better endowed upon their father's death. If Marcia hoped to be cared for by her children in her old age, then it perhaps behooved Marcia's father to accept Hortensius's offer, providing for Marcia a better husband than Cato. We also do not know whether Cato made the choice to give Marcia to Hortensius based on his unbalanced hatred of Caesar, and his desperate want of allies, or because, as a Stoic, Cato felt it necessary to publicly demonstrate that he was no slave to emotion, even towards his own wife. Yet, in the absence of Marcia, Cato took to drinking his cheap wines much more freely and frequently, often locking himself in conference for extended periods of time with amphorae of wine and other Stoic philosophers. By the end of 56 BC, the consuls, Lentulus Marcellinus and Marcia's father, Philippus, stepped down from office, but, due to the constant violence, no consuls had been elected to replace them. But, the legion of 5,000 soldiers which Caesar had promised Crassus and Pompeius in the spring, finally arrived in Rome. Suddenly, the violence in the city stopped, allowing consular elections to take place at the beginning of 55 BC. With the exception of Lucius Domitius Aenobarbus, all opposition to the consulships of Crassus and Pompeius had long since withdrawn from the race. Attended by Cato and his conservative supporters, Aenobarbus arrived at the voting grounds before dawn, intending to be there early to ensure nothing was amiss. Unfortunately, even at that early hour, Enobarbus found the voting ground swarming with armed supporters of Pompeius and Crassus, which immediately led to a fight. Several conservatives were killed in the struggle. And though both managed to survive, Cato, who was running for the praetorship, was injured while defending Enobarbus. When the sun came up, Caesar's 5,000 veterans, along with Publius Clodius's massive street army, all lined up to cast their votes. Pompeius and Crassus easily won the 55 BC consulship. Because no elections had been held in mid-56 BC, Pompeius and Crassus immediately took up the responsibility of overseeing the elections of the other offices. In the election for praetor, Cato, through the support of the aristocratic Senate, took the lead. At this point, Pompeius halted the assembly, citing bad portents. As Pompeius waited on the podium, soldiers and gang members made their way through the voting pens, threatening, intimidating, and even injuring voters. After the thugs were finished with the crowd, the evil portents mysteriously disappeared, and Pompeius restarted the vote. Cato was no longer winning. Multiple times Pompeius stopped the voting, citing alarming omens, only to restart after his bully boys made their way through the crowd. By picking and choosing which elections were valid and which were ill-omened, Pompeius made certain that allies of the Triumvirs were elected, while those who opposed them went down to defeat. Marcia's new husband, Hortensius, as a conservative, likely came home battered, bloody, and outraged following the election of Pompeius and Crassus to the consulship. By stealing the 55 BC consulship through the use of violence, the Triumvirs had completely usurped the right of free men within the Senate to cast a vote for the candidate of their choice. Even the common people, who once idolized Pompeius Magnus, turned cool towards the triumvirate. Although they had no say in elections such as consul and praetor, they were nonetheless aware that Pompeius, Crassus, and Caesar had misappropriated Rome's long-standing tradition of free elections. Rome was now under the control of three men.